The sky above Zalari Prime burned red as ships fell like stones from orbit. Explosions lit the clouds, and the wind carried smoke and ash over the golden towers of the royal palace. Human and alien soldiers fought across the marble steps, blood from both sides soaking into the soil of the ancient gardens. And in the middle of it all, Princess Thaleria stood tall, her armor glowing with the power of her people. She was not afraid of war. She was born in it. She had led armies at age 15. She had crushed 3 rebellions before her first royal ceremony. Her voice could command fleets, and her eyes could silence generals. But the one thing she could not understand, the one thing she mocked, was human intimacy. When her advisors showed her human history, she had scoffed at the idea of love. They fought for each other, risked death for one another just to share a kiss. She had laughed aloud in her court. A kiss? What power did lips have? No warrior ever won a battle with a kiss. No planet bowed because of love. Power came from fear and respect, not soft emotions. Yet that day, something happened on the battlefield that would begin to shake her beliefs. She saw a single human soldier, running through the flames, not retreating, but charging toward the enemy lines. He wasn't aiming his rifle. He wasn't throwing grenades. He was carrying a wounded alien child in his arms. A Zalari child. One of hers. Her soldiers hesitated. Her enemies fired at him, but the human didn't stop. He moved like fire couldn't touch him, like death couldn't find him. When he reached the wall, he handed the child to a Zalari medic and collapsed without a word. Blood soaked his back. He had been hit 3 times. Still, he didn't cry or beg. He simply looked up and asked if the child was safe. Thaleria watched from her balcony. She couldn't believe what she'd seen. A human had saved one of her kind during a war. Without reason, without reward. That act made no sense to her. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't duty. It was something else. Something human. The human soldier, later identified as Lieutenant Cade Mercer, was taken prisoner by the palace guards. Thaleria ordered him brought to her chamber. She wanted to see this strange creature up close. She expected him to grovel or beg for mercy. Instead, he stood tall, even with chains on his wrists. His gaze didn't flinch under hers. That annoyed her. "You saved a Zalari child," she said. "Why?" "She was crying," Cade said. "She needed help." "That's not a reason," Thaleria said coldly. "It was to me," Cade replied. She stared at him in silence. His face was calm but not weak. His eyes held no fear, only honesty. It disturbed her more than it should have. She dismissed him with a wave and ordered him sent to the lower holding chambers. But her mind did not let go of him. That night, she walked the halls of her palace, restless. Her victory felt empty. The humans were retreating. Her general celebrated. But she kept thinking about the human who didn't kill, the one who protected the weak. His kind confused her. They fought wars with emotion, with bonds, with something she couldn't name. It made her feel like there was something missing inside her. 2 nights later, she visited the holding chambers in disguise. She wore a cloak to hide her royal markings. The guards stepped aside when she ordered them to leave. She stood outside Cade's cell and stared in. He was sitting on the floor, humming something. A human song, gentle, strange, beautiful. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly. Cade looked up, slightly surprised. "You're not what I expected either." She stepped closer. "You humans. Your weakness is your heart." "Or maybe," he said, "it's our strength." They talked for hours, about nothing and everything, about home. About how humans kissed before battle for luck. About how they held hands so they wouldn't feel alone. She listened, trying not to show how curious she was. Every word from him made the world she knew feel smaller. And then, without thinking, she asked, "Why do humans kiss?" Cade paused. "To feel closer, to share something real. It's Hard to explain. Then show me, she said, her voice cold but her heart thundering in her chest. He stood up slowly. The chains still hung from his wrists. Are you sure? She nodded. She didn't understand the warmth rising in her. She didn't like how her pulse quickened. But she wanted to know. He stepped close, gently, respectfully, and then he kissed her. Not with force, not like war, but like he was giving something, offering trust, feeling, something she had never received. When their lips parted, she stood, frozen. She had faced 1,000 weapons, but she had never felt something so soft break past her armor. Her lips tingled. Her heart felt confused. Her mind was quiet for the first time. This kiss had changed something inside her. Princess Thaleria avoided the mirrors in her chamber the next morning. She didn't want to see herself. She feared her own reflection might show something new, something weak. She had kissed a human. She had felt warmth. It was just an experiment, she told herself. A lesson, nothing more, but the memory didn't fade. It clung to her like invisible fire. His lips had not demanded anything. They had simply offered. And now something inside her shifted each time she thought of it. Her fingers brushed her lips as she paced the room. Her chest tightened when she remembered his steady eyes. She ordered her staff to say nothing of the visit. No one could know. Not her generals, not her court. Especially not her father, the emperor. He still believed the humans were vermin creatures meant to be studied, used, or crushed. If he discovered she had spoken to one alone, let alone shared a kiss, he would question her loyalty. She didn't understand why she cared. The kiss didn't change anything. The war still raged. Her people still bled. She still commanded armies. But Cade Mercer's voice stayed in her ears like a song she couldn't silence. She found herself walking past the holding chamber again. Even when she had no reason to, Cade noticed her hesitation on her next visit. She stood outside the bars, dressed as a soldier again, pretending she didn't care, but her eyes searched his face too long. He smiled without mocking her. You came back, he said. You're a prisoner. I came to observe your behavior. She replied quickly. He tilted his head. Is that what you tell yourself? She didn't answer. Instead, she sat on the stone bench outside his cell and watched him quietly. He was thinner than before. He hadn't eaten much. His hands looked bruised from being shackled too long. She hadn't ordered his pain, but she had allowed it. A part of her hated that now. Why do you do it? She asked. Why protect others? Why not just save yourself? Because if I only cared about myself, I wouldn't be human anymore. He said. His words hit something deep inside her. Something she didn't want to name. The Zalari culture did not teach compassion. They taught strength, order, survival. Emotion was a weakness. Yet this man, weak in body and chained, spoke with more strength than any general in her army. Days passed, and her visits became regular. At first, they talked like enemies, then like strangers, then strangely like something else. He asked about her childhood. She told him about sword training at sunrise. He told her about his mother's homemade bread and stargazing with his sister. She laughed for the first time in years. A real laugh, not the cold one she used in court. One evening, she brought food, real food, from the royal kitchen. She didn't ask permission. She didn't need it. She watched as Cade ate slowly, politely, like a guest rather than a captive. She didn't touch her own plate. She only watched him, confused by her own actions. You didn't have to bring this, he said gently. I know, she replied. But I wanted to. The room fell silent, not heavy but soft. Safe. He didn't reach through the bars. He didn't ask for anything. He simply sat with her. That night, she didn't rush to leave. She stayed long after the guards shifted restlessly at the end of the hall. Later, in the solitude of her chamber, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Was this what humans felt when they connected? A strange ache, soft and sharp at the same time. A longing for someone else's voice, someone else's warmth. She had mocked intimacy before. Now she feared it had taken root in her heart. Her father summoned her the next day. His voice was as cold as ever. He spoke of the war, of the enemy, of the humans' refusal to surrender. Then he dropped the words that made her freeze. "We're executing the human prisoner tomorrow, the one your guards captured with the Zilari child. Let the others see what loyalty to humans costs." She kept her face calm, but inside her thoughts screamed. Her hands curled into fists beneath her robe. She tried to speak, but her voice came too late. Her father had already turned away. Orders had been given. No room for mercy that night. She stood outside Cade's cell again. Her breath came faster than usual. Her chest rose and fell like something wild stirred inside. "You're to be executed," she said, voice flat but cracking. He blinked, but didn't look surprised. "I figured. I saw the looks." She stepped closer. "Why aren't you afraid?" "Because I already got something I never expected," he said softly. "You." Her heart slammed inside her ribs. She hated the feeling. She loved it. She wanted to tear it out. She wanted to hold on to it. She reached for the keys around her waist. "Don't say another word," she whispered as she opened the cell door. Princess Thaleria opened the cell door, her hands trembling even though she had commanded fleets without fear. The cold air inside the chamber rushed over her face like ice, but she didn't stop. She looked at Cade, still sitting calmly in the corner, and stepped inside without saying another word. He stood slowly, his chains rattling faintly. His eyes didn't ask why, he already knew. She reached out with the key and unlocked his cuffs one at a time. Her fingers brushed against his skin, and that strange warmth returned. It wasn't fire. It wasn't pain. It was something deeper. "You don't deserve this," she whispered, though no one was listening. "You saved one of us. You didn't fight back even once, and still they want to kill you." Cade looked at her with quiet strength. "You know what they fear? It's not me, it's what I changed inside you." That struck her like a pulse through her bones. She stepped back. For a moment, confused, angry, ashamed, yet she didn't deny it. Something inside her had changed. And now she stood against her own people because of one man's heart. "Follow me," she ordered. They moved through the shadows of the palace halls, her cloak wrapped tightly around him. The guards didn't look twice. Her rank was too high. No one dared question her. But every step felt like walking toward rebellion. Not against the throne. Against everything she had been taught. They reached the old tunnels beneath the palace. She had used them as a child to escape her tutors. Now she used them to save a man who had kissed her once, and left a storm behind her eyes. She didn't speak as she opened the ancient stone gate. "You'll find a transport at the base of the hills beyond the wall," she said. "Go fast, go silent, and never return." Cade stared at her. "Is that what you want?" She didn't answer. Her throat burned. The words wouldn't form. She had spent her life laughing at things like love. Now she couldn't even name what she felt. She turned away to hide the confusion in her face. But he stepped closer. "You're not afraid of war," he said. "But you're afraid of this, aren't you?" She froze. He wasn't wrong. Swords never made her flinch. Battles never made her cry. But this feeling that softened her iron will, it terrified her. He leaned in slowly, carefully, until his hand was against her cheek. "Let me say goodbye the human way." She didn't stop him. She didn't breathe. When his lips touched hers again, it wasn't like before. This one held sadness, farewell, and something more powerful than any throne she had ever sat upon. Her eyes closed as the kiss deepened, and for a moment, the war vanished. When they parted, her eyes were wet. She quickly wiped them before he saw. She was still a princess. She still had to return to the world of strength and silence. But she had let her enemy go free, and she had done it with a kiss. Cade disappeared into the night. She waited until the first light touched the palace towers before returning through the tunnels. No one suspected a thing. Her father believed the human would die with the others. The execution went on as planned, with another soldier in his place. No one knew the difference. But Thaleria changed. She no longer laughed during strategy meetings. She no longer dismissed human emotions as weak. She became colder on the outside. And her court praised her for it. But deep inside, a warmth had been born. A memory, alive like fire in her chest. Weeks passed, then months. The humans pushed back in small victories. The war stretched on longer than her father expected. He grew more brutal in his orders. But Thaleria began sending quiet messages to her generals. Take prisoners, show mercy, spare the innocent. She signed those orders in secret, and at night, she still dreamed of a kiss in the dark tunnels. A kiss that had pulled her out of her own prison. The walls around her heart had cracked. She had tasted something real, something she could not forget. Even if he never returned, a part of him stayed behind. One night, during a royal feast, a spy report arrived. A human squad had broken through the southern front. Most were killed. One body was never found. A soldier named Cade Mercer. Her fingers clenched the scroll. She said nothing. But her eyes burned into the candlelight, holding back tears. Her people still feared humans. They still saw them as dangerous. But she had seen something different. She had kissed something different. And now, no matter what came next, she would never be the same. Asterisk. The war continued. But Thaleria fought differently now. Her orders carried precision, not cruelty. She struck enemy strongholds, but spared cities. She led with silence instead of speeches. Her generals praised her success, not knowing she no longer fought for power, but for a future she hadn't yet dared to speak of. She still thought of Cade every day. She didn't know if he had survived or if he had vanished into some distant land. She didn't let herself ask. But in her heart, she believed he lived. Not because she was hopeful, because she felt it like a bond that still whispered across stars. In private, she changed. Her servants noticed she no longer celebrated victories. She rarely wore her royal gowns. She spent hours reading about human culture, especially about love. Things she had once mocked now drew her curiosity. She wanted to understand what Cade had shown her with a single kiss. One night, she stood alone in the ancient chamber of ancestors, beneath the glowing stone walls where past rulers' names were carved. She placed her hand on her mother's symbol. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "What would you have done if a human made you feel alive again?" The stones did not answer, but in the silence she knew she wasn't alone. Something had shifted in the winds of fate. Her life no longer belonged only to war or royal duty. It was tied to something else now. Something she hadn't chosen, yet could not deny. Meanwhile, on a barren moon orbiting the edge of contested space, a scarred man stepped out of a transport ship wearing worn armor and carrying a coated crystal. He limped from an old wound, but his eyes were sharp. He had spent months in hiding, moving between stars, chased by both friend and enemy. His name was still Cade Mercer. He had survived. Barely. He escaped into the wilds after Thaleria helped him flee. Smugglers found him half dead and sold him to a resistance cell that operated deep in the unclaimed territories. For weeks, he served as a shadow unknown, silent, waiting for one thing, a message from her. It never came. Not because she had forgotten, because she couldn't risk it. A single signal could destroy them both. So Cade waited, building trust among the resistance. He fought small battles. He saved lives. But nothing felt like that moment in the tunnel when her lips touched his. Everything else was gray after that. Then, came a whisper, quiet, uncertain, but real. A wounded merchant spoke of a Zalari princess who refused to kill prisoners, who spared the weak, who studied human culture in secret. The rumor spread among the stars. Cade knew it wasn't just gossip. It was her. He traveled toward Zalari space again, carefully. Disguised, he knew she was still there. Still fighting. But no longer the same, and he carried something with him now. Not weapons, not revenge, but a message. A request for peace, written in both their names, encoded into the crystal he held. Back in the palace, Thaleria prepared for another negotiation. With the High Council. She no longer wanted war, but she had to move slowly. Her father's health was failing. Soon, she would sit on the throne alone. When that happened, she planned to change everything. But she needed allies. She needed proof that peace could work. That night, as she walked through the gardens, a shadow moved near the marble fountain. She turned, expecting a guard. Instead, her heart stopped. He stood there, older, tired, his eyes deeper, but still Cade. Still the man who kissed her once and changed her forever. She didn't speak. She just walked toward him, each step like crossing a dream. She touched his chest. His heart beat fast. Under her hand. Her voice broke as she said, "You came back." He smiled. "I had to. I never left you, not truly." She pulled him into her arms without hesitation. This time, the kiss wasn't a question. It was a promise. One born from silence, from distance, from war, and still burning stronger than ever. They stood there as moonlight poured over the ruins of the old wall. She didn't care who saw. Let them see, let them know. She was no longer afraid to feel, no longer ashamed to want peace. She had learned that intimacy wasn't weakness. It was courage, and now, standing in the arms of the man who taught her that, she was ready to rebuild the galaxy with something stronger than power. She would rebuild it with love. Thaleria and Cade sat together under the shade of the palace trees, far from the busy war rooms and eyes of the council. No guards watched them, no weapons hung at their sides. They spoke in whispers, as if the world might break the moment if it heard them. For the first time, their words held no fear, no politics, just truth. "I thought you were dead," she said quietly. Not looking at him. "I was close," Cade answered. "But something kept me alive. Maybe it was the memory of you. Or maybe it was the hope of one more kiss." She smiled, but it faded quickly. Her world was still dangerous. The throne was not yet hers. Her father still ruled with an iron hand, though his health was fading fast. If the Emperor learned she had allowed a human to step foot on palace soil, he would call it betrayal. "We can't be seen together," she said. "I know," Cade replied. "But we don't need to be loud to change the galaxy." He handed her the crystal, the encoded treaty. It was simple. A ceasefire proposal between select human colonies and the border systems under her control. It wasn't signed by any governments. Just names, his and hers. No rank, no throne. Only two people who had bled enough and wanted peace. She turned it over in her hand. "If I show this to my court, they'll laugh. If I show it to my father, he'll have you executed." "Then don't show them," he said. "Just act on it quietly, one saved life at a time." She looked at him, not like a princess, but like a woman learning how to feel again. He was not like the Zalari warriors she grew up around. He didn't demand or boast. He didn't wear a mask of pride. And yet, he stood stronger than any of them. She reached out and placed her hand over his. They stayed hidden for days. She arranged for him to live in a forgotten wing of the palace, disguised as a scholar studying human history. Only her most trusted aides knew the truth. Some were confused. Some were loyal, some feared it, but none spoke out. Thaleria's authority was already growing. Cade helped her write new orders for the front lines. Captured humans were to be treated with honor, not as beasts. Wounded civilians were to be given shelter, regardless of species. Slowly, without shouting it, peace began to take root, and yet, danger circled them like a silent predator. Her father's advisors were watching. They had noticed her new ways. Her softened speeches, her refusal to burn cities. Some even whispered that she had been touched by human weakness. One noble even dared say it aloud. He disappeared the next morning. The emperor grew suspicious. One evening, as Thaleria walked back from Cade's hidden room, she found her father waiting in her chamber. He sat in the dark, his voice thin and bitter. "You smell like mercy," he said. "That scent is not of our blood." She said nothing. At first, but inside her heart beat fast. He had no proof. But he had instinct. And old rulers always trusted instinct more than facts. He stared at her with hollow eyes and said, "Tell me, daughter, have you kissed your enemy again?" She answered with silence. Not out of fear, but out of defiance. She knew he wouldn't understand. He didn't believe in connection. Only power. She no longer respected that. And that, above all, was what made her dangerous to him. The next day, Kat disappeared from the palace. No note. No signs, just gone. Thaleria tore the rooms apart, questioned every guard, searched the tunnels, herself. But there was no trace. It was like he had never been there at all. Only the crystal remained, placed gently on her pillow. She knew what it meant. He had left so she could survive, so she could rise, so her love wouldn't be used against her. That kiss, that fire, was still with her, but now she had to carry it alone. Not as a wound, but as a sword. With a cold face and a heavy heart, Thaleria walked into the war chamber the next morning. She gave new orders, sharper, smarter, her. Generals obeyed without question. Her father, too weak to rise, watched from his throne as his daughter took command without speaking a single rebellion. But inside her, the rebellion had already happened, and it had started with a kiss. The emperor died before the season changed. No poison, no blade. Just age and pride draining from his bones until he never woke again. The galaxy did not weep. The Zalari throne passed to Princess Thaleria without contest. Some expected chaos, others expected war. Instead, she shocked them all with silence. She gave no grand speeches, no demands for vengeance, no royal parades. She wore black for mourning and returned to the war chamber with eyes colder than any steel. But her mind had sharpened. Her pain had not made her weak, it had carved her into something unstoppable. Her first act as empress was a ceasefire. Not across all systems, but in 3 critical zones where battles had drained both human and Zalari forces. She signed the orders herself, using the same wording from the crystal Cade had left behind. Quietly, strategically, the galaxy barely noticed. But it changed everything. Her court rumbled. Whispers of betrayal circled the palace. Some nobles demanded her removal. Others plotted behind closed doors. But none dared confront her directly. She had inherited her father's throne, but she did not use his fear. She used something more. Dangerous, patience. Across the stars, humans began noticing fewer raids. Some border colonies even received Zalari aid medicine, supplies, food. At first, they called it a trick. But then they noticed something else. The attacks had stopped, not because they had won, but because someone in power had chosen peace. And in the quiet, rumors began to spread again, not about war, about a woman, a ruler, an alien queen who once mocked human love but now ruled like someone who had known it. They called her the Silver Flame, cold in battle, but lit from within. Thaleria didn't smile at the name, but she didn't deny it either. Every night, she sat by the edge of her private garden, where Cade once kissed her under the moonlight. She said nothing. She let the wind speak. And each time it passed her skin, it felt like his breath. Years. Passed, treaties followed, enemies became neighbors. And one day, a united summit was announced. Human and Zalari leaders would meet in the neutral zone of Trion V to sign a lasting alliance. Thaleria would attend personally. She prepared without emotion. She did not hope for anything beyond duty. The day arrived. The halls of Trion V shimmered with banners of both worlds. She walked with the poise of an empress, her silver cloak dragging behind her like a shadow of history. Human leaders bowed. Soldiers saluted. The room held its breath as she stood before the peace table. Then she saw him, older, scarred, his beard trimmed, his uniform dark and plain. But his eyes hadn't changed, not even a little. Cade stood in the back, near the wall, like a soldier who didn't belong among kings. But when their eyes met, time broke apart and rewove itself into something perfect. He didn't move. He didn't need to. She took the first step, one slow, sure movement, then another. The galaxy watched its empress cross the floor like a storm, made of stars, and when she reached him, she didn't speak. She didn't ask why he returned. She simply touched his face. He whispered, "I waited, just in case." She replied, "You were never gone." And in front of two worlds, Thaleria kissed the man who had taught her how to feel. It was not a kiss of secrecy, not like before. It was truth, seen by all, and no one mocked it. No one dared. Because in that moment, they saw not weakness but the power of something far greater than war. The treaty was signed with her hand in his, not as a symbol, as a future. Thaleria made it clear. Peace was no longer just a dream. It was a path they would walk together. That night, as stars lit the dome of Trion sky, she stood beside Cade in silence. She didn't ask where he had been. He didn't explain why he had returned now. Some things didn't need to be spoken anymore. Some bonds were already sealed, and for the first time since her childhood, the Empress of 1,000 Worlds rested. Her head on someone's shoulder, not because she was tired, but because she had found home.